next, we're going to be talking about the 2022 KJR Dry Rosé. And this is actually pretty exciting for us, as very often the rosé is the first thing that is a finished wine and that we get to put into bottles. So it's really like the first culmination point of the vintage prior.
Yes, it's a really good sort of like check-in on what that vintage delivered to us. And what you'll see with this rosé is a vintage that was a little bit warmer, a little bit drier than some have been in the past, and that shows up in the color of this wine. We always point out that our winemaking for this wine stays the same vintage in and vintage out. We don't sort of adjust our cold soaking regime or anything like that. So in a way, just looking at the color of the wine in the glass gives you a sense of what the vintage was like.
I think of note, 2021 was definitely what we would consider kind of a lighter vintage here in the Finger Lakes as far as yields went. So what that means is we were getting less fruit off of the vineyards than we might, normally expect. And the result, however, is that the vines are really pushing a lot of energy into the grapes that are on them. And you end up having some really kind of fantastic kind of flavor ripeness that comes from vintages like that.
So this wine has the classic sort of cherry fruit and cherry color of the KJR Rosé from a warmer vintage or smaller vintage. And it also has the standard 72 hours cold soaking, which we always do, one for the color, but two to allow us to make a bone dry wine that still has a lot of weight and texture to it. The KJR Rosé has always been meant, first and foremost, as a food rosé. It's not just a summer sipper necessarily. There's a lot of concentration and oomph there. And this wine definitely delivers on that in a beautiful way from a really fascinating vintage.